When a struggling woman finds herself stranded in a dark alley, a homeless man selflessly gives her his last $5 for a bus ride home. Touched by his kindness, she thanks him and disappears into the night. The next day, the man is shocked when a mysterious man in a suit appears looking for him. What unfolds next is a story of fate, hidden truths, and a life-changing revelation that will leave you speechless. Before we jump into this incredible story, drop a comment, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe for more. The city was alive with neon lights and hurried footsteps, yet within its cracks, shadows lurked, forgotten souls left to the mercy of fate. Among them was Daniel, a homeless man who had long accepted the cruel hand life had dealt him. That night, the wind howled through the alleyways, its icy fingers creeping into the tattered layers of his clothing. He sat by the entrance of an old diner, clutching a battered coffee cup that had collected more rainwater than coins. His stomach growled, but hunger had become a familiar companion. He was about to retreat into his makeshift cardboard shelter when he heard footsteps, hurried, frantic, and unsteady. A woman, Rachel, stumbled into view. Her coat was soaked, her hands trembling as she rummaged through her bag. The dim streetlight cast long shadows across her pale face, her eyes wide with desperation. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked cautiously. She looked up, startled, then exhaled sharply. I lost my wallet. I have no way to get home. I don't know what to do." Daniel studied her. She wasn't like the others who passed by without a glance. Her panic was real. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, the last of his money. "Here. It's not much, but it'll get you on a bus." Rachel hesitated, her eyes welling with tears. I can't take this." "Please," Daniel insisted with a small smile. "Just get home safe." She took the money with a trembling hand, her voice breaking. "Thank you. I'll never forget this." As she disappeared into the night, Daniel felt an odd warmth in his chest. He had nothing, yet for the first time in years, he felt rich. What he didn't know was that this small act of kindness would change his life forever. The next morning, Daniel awoke to the sound of the city stirring. The honking cars, the distant chatter of pedestrians, and the occasional rustle of discarded newspapers felt like his usual wake-up call. He stretched, feeling the cold stiffness in his joints, and rubbed his hands together for warmth. Just another day of survival. Or so he thought. As he stood to gather his few belongings, he noticed something unusual. A man in a sleek black suit standing at the entrance of the alley, scanning the area as if searching for someone. His polished shoes stood out against the cracked pavement, his sharp gaze surveying the streets with quiet urgency. Daniel instinctively shrank back into the shadows. People in suits never looked for people like him, unless it was trouble. Then, the man turned and locked eyes with him. Daniel's breath caught. He gripped the edge of his ragged coat, preparing to walk away, but the man stepped forward with purpose. "Are you the one who helped a woman last night?" the man asked, his voice calm but firm. Daniel frowned. "What woman?" The man sighed, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a photo. When Daniel saw it, his chest tightened. "Rachel." The man exhaled in relief. "I've been looking for you. My name is David Carter. I'm her husband." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. He had expected gratitude, maybe a small thanks. But David's expression wasn't one of simple appreciation. There was something else. "Why are you looking for me?" Daniel asked cautiously. David studied him for a moment before speaking. "Because last night, you didn't just help my wife, you saved her life." The words hit Daniel like a freight train. The chill in the air suddenly felt suffocating. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. David's jaw tightened. Rachel wasn't just stranded last night. She was being followed. If she hadn't gotten on that bus, she might not have made it home. A wave of unease crashed over Daniel. Followed? By who? But before he could ask, David took a deep breath and reached into his jacket pocket. What he pulled out next made Daniel's heart stop. It was a check, made out to Daniel, for $50,000. Daniel's eyes locked onto the check, his breath caught in his throat. $50,000. More money than he had ever seen in his life. His fingers twitched as if afraid to touch it, afraid that the moment he did, the illusion would shatter. "Why?" he finally croaked, his voice raw with disbelief. "Why would you do this?" David studied him carefully. "Because you deserve it." Daniel swallowed hard. He had lived on the streets long enough to know that money never came without a price. His eyes flickered up to David's. "You said she was being followed. Who was after her?" David hesitated. That's complicated. Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. No. See, I may not have much, but I know when someone's holding something back. He squared his shoulders. You don't give a man 50 grand just for bus fare. So tell me the truth, what's really going on? David exhaled sharply, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, he looked Daniel dead in the eye. My wife, she witnessed something she wasn't supposed to. A chill crawled up Daniel's spine. What do you mean? David glanced around, as if the walls had ears. Rachel saw a deal go down. A dangerous one. A man was killed. She was the only witness, and the people involved, they don't leave loose ends. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. So she wasn't just lost last night. No, David said grimly. She was running for her life. The weight of the revelation pressed down on Daniel's chest. If he hadn't helped her, if he hadn't given her that $5, she might be dead right now. David held out the check again. This isn't just a reward. It's an opportunity. Take it, Daniel. Start over. You saved my wife. Now let me change your life. Daniel's hands trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to take the money and never look back. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Rachel was still in danger. And now maybe so was he. Daniel's heart pounded as he stared at the check. $50,000. It could change everything, food, shelter, a second chance. But the weight of David's words lingered, thick and suffocating. Rachel had been running for her life. And now, by helping her, had he just painted a target on his back? Slowly, he pushed the check back toward David. I don't need your money, he said, his voice firm. David's brows furrowed. What are you talking about? This could get you off the streets. Daniel exhaled, shaking his head. And what happens when those men come looking for me? You think they won't find out I helped her? Money can't buy safety, David. David's jaw tightened. I won't let anything happen to you. Daniel let out a dry, bitter laugh. You can't promise that. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and unspoken. Then, David glanced over his shoulder, his expression shifting into something that sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. Fear. Something was wrong. David grabbed his wrist. We have to go. Now. Daniel barely had time to process before he was being pulled out of the alley. What the hell? Then he heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Approaching. Daniel turned his head, just in time to see a dark figure step into the alley. The man wore a long coat, his hands buried deep in his pockets, but it was the way he moved that sent a chill through Daniel. Slow, deliberate, like a predator closing in. David's grip on Daniel tightened. Don't look back. Just keep moving. But Daniel couldn't. Because just before they turned the corner, he saw the man reach into his coat and pull out a gun. Daniel's breath hitched. His body screamed at him to run, but his legs felt cemented to the pavement. His pulse roared in his ears, drowning out everything but the terrifying sight of the gun glinting under the streetlight. Move, David hissed, shoving him forward. The two of them bolted. The alley was tight, the buildings towering on either side like prison walls. Their footsteps echoed against the cold brick as they sprinted down the wet pavement. Then bang! A gunshot tore through the night. Daniel flinched, expecting to feel the searing pain of a bullet, but instead, he heard the sharp shatter of glass behind them. The shot had missed. For now. David yanked Daniel around a corner, nearly sending them both to the ground. This way! They burst into a side street, their lungs burning, their bodies moving purely on survival instinct. Another shot rang out, this time closer. Daniel didn't need to turn around to know. The man was gaining on them. We need to get out of sight. Daniel gasped. David's eyes darted frantically before landing on an abandoned service door wedged slightly open. Without hesitation, he grabbed Daniel's arm and dragged him inside. The two stumbled into darkness, pressing themselves against the wall as they fought to control their breathing. Outside, footsteps slowed. Then silence. Daniel's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. His mind raced. Who was this man? Was he alone? How far would they go to keep Rachel silent? David clenched his jaw. We need to get to my wife. Now. Daniel's hands curled into fists. He had spent years thinking only about his own survival. But this? This was bigger than him. If he walked away now, Rachel might not live to see another morning. Taking a deep breath, he met David's gaze. Then let's end this. Daniel and David weaved through the city's underbelly, slipping into shadows, avoiding open streets, and keeping their heads low. Every distant footstep, every flickering streetlight felt like a warning. They were being hunted. We're almost there, David murmured as they approached a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Rachel's inside. Room 207. Daniel nodded, his muscles tense. If those men knew where Rachel was, she wouldn't be safe for long. David rapped twice on the door, then a pause, then once more a signal. A few agonizing seconds passed. Then the lock clicked. Rachel yanked the door open, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. When she saw Daniel, her expression crumbled. "Oh my God," she whispered, rushing forward and grabbing his hands. I didn't know if you'd be okay." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to people worrying about him. "I'm still here," he muttered. Rachel exhaled shakily and pulled him inside. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. David locked the door behind them and turned to Rachel. "He knows, Rachel. Everything." Her lips parted, guilt flashing across her face. "Daniel, Before she could speak, a phone rang. Rachel froze. The sound felt deafening. Slowly, her trembling hand reached for the burner phone on the nightstand. She hesitated, then answered. A deep, cold voice echoed through the speaker. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Rachel." Daniel's blood ran cold. Rachel's grip tightened on the phone. "Please, just leave us alone." The voice chuckled. "Too late for that. You involved a stranger. Now he dies too." The line went dead. Silence suffocated the room. Daniel felt a slow dread curl in his gut. Then, a car engine rumbled outside. Headlights flooded through the thin motel curtains. Rachel turned to Daniel, her voice barely a whisper. "They found us." A cold sweat broke out on Daniel's back as the headlights cast long shadows against the motel walls. They weren't just being watched, they were trapped. David rushed to the window, peeking out through the torn blinds. His face paled. 2 cars. 4 men. They're armed. Rachel's breath hitched. "Oh my God, they're going to kill us." Daniel clenched his fists. He had been surviving on the streets for years, dodging danger, blending into the background. But this was something else. David spun toward them. "We have to go now." Daniel's eyes flicked to the door. "They're blocking the front, aren't they?" David nodded grimly. "The only way out is the back." Rachel grabbed her bag with shaking hands. "But what if they?" A car door slammed. Then another. Footsteps. Heavy. Closing in. Daniel's pulse thundered. No more time. He sprinted toward the motel bathroom, yanking open the small, grimy window. It was tight, but it was an exit. "Go," he hissed. Rachel hesitated, fear in her eyes. But David nudged her forward, and she squeezed through first. Daniel followed, pulling himself out just as the motel door burst open. Bang! Bang! Gunshots ripped through the room, splintering the walls. Daniel hit the ground outside, rolling into the wet dirt. Rachel gasped, covering her mouth to stop a scream. David came last, his feet barely clearing the window as another bullet whizzed past his head. They had seconds before the gunman realized they had escaped. Daniel pushed himself up, heart hammering. "Run!" And they did. Ducking behind dumpsters, racing through the darkened alleyways, they ran like their lives depended on it, because they did. But as they turned a corner, Daniel suddenly stopped. David crashed into him. "What are you doing?" Daniel's eyes widened. His stomach twisted into a knot. There, standing at the end of the alley, was another man. Waiting for them. A gun in his hand. Rachel let out a small, strangled sob. Daniel knew, in that moment, they weren't making it out of this clean. Daniel's breath came in sharp gasps as he stared down the barrel of the gun. The man at the end of the alley didn't move, his grip steady, his face partially hidden in the shadows. But then he stepped forward. The dim streetlight caught his face, revealing a deep scar running from his left brow to his cheek. His eyes were cold, calculating. This wasn't just some hired thug. This was someone who enjoyed the hunt. David instinctively stepped in front of Rachel. "Please," he said, his voice careful. "We don't want any trouble." The man chuckled darkly. "That's funny, considering the mess you made." He tilted his head at Daniel. "And you, the homeless guy who decided to play hero." Daniel's hands curled into fists. He had been invisible his whole life, just another face on the streets, ignored and forgotten. And yet, here he was, standing between life and death because of one small act of kindness. The man raised his gun. "Here's the deal. Rachel comes with me, and maybe, I let you two walk away." Rachel shook her head violently. "No, please no." David gritted his teeth. "Over my dead body." Scarface smirked. "That can be arranged." Daniel's mind raced. They couldn't outrun a bullet. No escape. No weapons. No backup. Unless... His eyes darted to the alley's side, a pile of rusted pipes stacked against a dumpster. Not much, but maybe enough. He had one shot. Scarface took another step forward, his finger tightening on the trigger. Last chance. Daniel made his choice. He lunged. Time slowed. Daniel's body moved on instinct, his foot slamming into the pile of rusted pipes. Metal clattered, crashing onto the pavement, a loud, chaotic distraction. Scarface's focus flickered for a split second. That was all Daniel needed. He dove. A gunshot roared through the alley. Bang! Pain ripped through Daniel's shoulder. He hit the ground hard, a sharp burn searing through his body, but he didn't stop. His fingers closed around a heavy metal pipe. Scarface turned back, too late. Daniel swung with everything he had. Crack! The pipe smashed into Scarface's wrist. The gun flew from his hand, skidding across the pavement. Now! Daniel roared. David lunged, tackling Scarface, driving him into the wall. The two men struggled, grunting, fists flying in wild, desperate blows. Rachel scrambled forward, her hands snatching up the gun. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice shaking. David wrestled free, stumbling back, blood trickling from his lip. Scarface froze, breathing heavily. His cold gaze locked onto Rachel, then the gun in her trembling hands. A slow smirk crept across his bruised face. "You don't have the guts." Rachel's hands shook violently. Tears streamed down her face. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I never wanted this. I never wanted any of this." Scarface took a slow step forward, too confident, too sure she wouldn't pull the trigger. Daniel clutched his bleeding shoulder, his vision swimming. "Rachel!" Scarface lunged. Bang! The gun kicked in Rachel's hands. Scarface staggered. A dark stain blossomed on his chest. His smirk faded into something else. Confusion. Shock. His knees buckled. He hit the ground. Silence. Rachel's breath came in ragged gasps, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. Daniel, still on the ground, stared at her. She had done it. She had ended it. David rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over." But Daniel wasn't so sure. Because in the distance, he could hear sirens. And suddenly he realized this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights bouncing off the alley walls. Rachel stood frozen, the gun still clutched in her trembling hands. David gently pried it away, tossing it aside. "Rachel, look at me," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "We have to go. Now." But Daniel didn't move. His shoulder throbbed, warm blood soaking through his tattered coat. His body felt heavy, but his mind raced. If they ran, the police would find Scarface's body. There'd be an investigation. Questions. Questions that wouldn't have easy answers. Rachel had just killed a man. David seemed to come to the same realization. He turned to Daniel. "We need a plan." Daniel licked his dry lips. A plan? He had spent years just trying to survive the next day, never thinking beyond it. But this was different. He could feel it. The moment the cops arrived, everything would change. His eyes darted to Rachel, her breath ragged, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't a killer. She had just done what she had to. And David, he was willing to do anything to protect her. Daniel let out a slow, painful breath. He had a choice. He could walk away and let them face this alone. Or he could do the one thing no one had ever done for him. Take the fall. The sirens were on top of them now, tires screeching as police cars skidded to a stop at the alley's entrance. Daniel turned to David, his voice steady despite the pain. "Take Rachel and go." David's eyes widened. "What?" Daniel gave him a weak smirk. "I'm a nobody, remember? A homeless man with nothing to lose. They'll take one look at me and assume I was the one who pulled the trigger." Rachel gasped. "No, you can't. You have a life," Daniel interrupted, his voice firm. "I don't. Not yet." David shook his head. "Daniel, we can find another way." "There is no other way," Daniel cut in. His gaze softened. "You have a family, David. You have her. You can still disappear, start over. But if you stay, you'll lose everything." Rachel sobbed. "I can't let you do this." Daniel forced a smile. "You already did something for me." His voice wavered slightly. "You saw me. You treated me like I mattered. That's enough." David grabbed his arm. "Daniel." The first cop rounded the corner, gun drawn. Daniel stepped forward, raising his good hand. "It was me," he called out. "I shot him." David and Rachel stared in horror. The officer barked commands, more cops swarming the alley, guns pointed. "On the ground. Now." Daniel slowly dropped to his knees, his hands behind his head. Behind him, David clenched his jaw. Then he took Rachel's hand. They ran. Daniel listened to their footsteps fade into the city, a small, victorious smile playing on his lips. For the first time in years, he had done something that mattered. And as the cold pavement pressed against his chest, as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he didn't feel regret. He felt free. Sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. Daniel had nothing, yet he gave the last $5 he had, never expecting it would put him in the middle of a life-or-death battle. But in the end, he made the ultimate sacrifice, proving that even those society ignores can be the greatest heroes. What would you have done in Daniel's place? Would you have run, or taken the fall? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to life, so turn on notifications and be the first to witness the next mind-blowing twist.